Welcome to Don't Mind Me, I'm Different, the podcast where I kick down the barriers and myths surrounding ADHD in the workplace. Whether it's navigating the office chaos, trying to break this stigma, or learning what is this thing called ADHD, I'm here step by step to advocate, educate, and empower you in any way that I can. Get ready to own your difference and shine on the job. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. I am not a professional. I am just a guy sharing his experience with ADHD. And if you do need help, please reach out to a professional, because there are many out there that can really make a huge impact in changing your life. So here we are back with this third part of the ADHD and Depression Silent Epidemic series. And in this episode, I talk about the LA fires and its impact, exploring the root cause of depression in childhood and how suicidal ideation is more common than you think. And please stay tuned to the end, because I have a special gift for you. So yeah, we're back, and continuing with depression. And like, what more relevance now than with the LA wildfires and the ravaging and destruction that's been doing across the country. And every day that I want to think that I have it tough, all I've got to do is think about them over there. And my deepest condolences go out. My sister lives out there. Fortunately, she wasn't in any of the near. She was 3 blocks down from the fire. So that's scary. And Russ Jones, who was out there, and I've heard that he's doing fine, and he was fortunate not to be near that. And my condolences go out to the family members who have lost loved ones and lost their homes and their place to live. I can't imagine what that's like. It is definitely a travesty, and my prayers go out to everyone that this is resolved, swiftly. And like I said, my deepest condolences go out to all those survivors and to those that had lost their lives. It's I've done some research into what happened and why it's going on. And so the fire that struck the Pacific Palisades and has caused thousands of firefighters from all over the country, as well as Canada and Mexico, to gather and try to contain it. Hurricane force winds have driven the fires that normally would have been blown towards the north directly into the residents of those people that were living in those neighborhoods. On January 7th at around 10:20 a.m., a live camera with Alert California, a program developed to monitor for wildfires, picked up smoke rising. The fire spread rapidly, even though they tried to contain it with helicopters dropping water over the fire that they got from the nearby reservoir. They ordered the residents to evacuate. However, that proved difficult for road closures and heavy traffic, and many ended up abandoning their vehicles. Some neighbors got together using water from nearby swimming pools to fight the deadly fires. So Governor Newsom declared a state of an emergency as evacuation shelters were set up around the city. Extreme wind condition began to complicate the response firefighters' efforts, forcing them to call off much needed air support. In just a little over a day, it grew to over 11,000 acres and in less than 48 hours, 5 separate fires had developed in that region. So on January 10th, Governor Newsom called for an independent investigation as to why there was a drop in water pressure to local fire hydrants and the reported unavailability of water supplies from the Santa Ynez Reservoir. So as to prevent this from happening again, it was reported by the LA Times that the reservoir had been closed for repairs at the time of the fire. This has quickly become one of the worst natural disasters in U.S. history based on cost. So yeah, a recent update for the fires is it has taken the lives of 28 people, destroyed more than 15,000 structures, and charged some 63 square miles. And they're not out of the woods yet, as strong wind warnings coming Wednesday night could reignite the fires. So one thing that really hasn't been talked about is the impact that this is having on the firefighters that are risking their lives. So one article that came out of the LA Times calls for first responders, trauma could linger long after LA County wildfires are out. Mike McGrew estimates that his family has more than 320 years of cumulative experience in police and firefighting work. So he talks about that it hits him personally, and that they're good in the fight. They're doing what they have to do, the first responders. But then comes the fight after the fight. How do you deal with those feelings? To help in that fight, McGrew co-founded 9/11 at Ease International, a Santa Barbara-based charity that provides free trauma-informed counseling for police and firefighters. The group is one of many formed in the past decade to address mental health issues among first responders who have much higher rates of depression, post-traumatic stress disorders, and suicide than the general population. So this is huge. So firefighters are exposed to the ultimate worst case scenarios, and that does something to somebody, said Hugo Catlin Jr., Director of Behavioral Health Service of the United Firefighters of Los Angeles City. He says, I always tell a firefighter, you probably don't have PTSD, but you probably do have some symptoms of post-traumatic event. The thing that you see on a daily basis has changed you. The amount of trauma that you're exposed to, most people would never see. And this gets overlooked. I definitely, only was made aware of this because I was searching for depression, stories of depression with the LA fire, and this really struck a chord with me, because we don't really think of firefighters as people that deal with the trauma, that are going through all these things, and they really are the unsung heroes that are going out there and doing the best that they can, facing death, facing unimaginable trauma from all that destruction, and I can imagine what that would, I can't imagine what that would feel like to lose somebody that you're trying to save. McGrew said most people will experience about half dozen traumatic fight or flight events in their lives, while a police officer or firefighter would typically experience 200 or more. Yet for years, first responders lean into the macho stereotypes surrounding their jobs and refuse to acknowledge the mental toll those jobs were taking. So he says there's a stigma. They told you it's a tough job, so you go out there and suck it up. The layer of trauma begins to affect you. Your life starts falling apart. And cops and firefighters have a really high divorce rate and negative coping mechanisms like alcohol. So, however, as the price of the coping methods has become known and as access to mental health support has become more widespread, that just rubs some dirt on it attitude has faded over the last 10 years, thankfully. He says, Catalan says that started with the incoming generation. Mental health has been much more available and talked about research throughout their lives. They're been exposed to therapy in elementary school, middle school, all the way through high school and college. So we're seeing a lot more members that come to us at a much earlier age as opposed to members that are close to retirement that are coming to us when everything is already falling apart. Is it a problem? Absolutely. We've seen it. It doesn't take a catastrophic incident for it to build up and affect people. It's always been kind of a culturally driven, and we can't break that armor, added Scott Ross, a retired LA County fire captain who now works as a peer counselor. It's taken a long time for peer support to be a trusted entity with the fire service, a place that's confidential and that they know they can go and talk to someone who's been through something. But we're not anywhere close to being 100% of where it's an accepted thing. I just wanted to bring light to this situation. A lot of us, including myself, overlook these great heroes who are going through so much. And I hope that they can get the help that they need. So in the midst of the wildfires in the Los Angeles area, the families of head coach Sean McVay and former offensive lineman Andrew Whitworth are uniting to contribute $400,000 to fire relief efforts. The donations will be evenly distributed between the LAFD Foundation and the Pasadena Community Foundation's Eaton Canyon Fire Relief and Recovery Fund. In addition to the $400,000 contributed, wide receiver Cooper Kupp and his family are encouraging others to support these vital causes by pledging to match public donations up to $500,000 for each foundation to generate an additional $1 million in relief funding. That's awesome. So if you want to donate to the LAFD Foundation and the Pasadena Community Foundation's Eaton Canyon Fire Relief and Recovery Fund, include LA Rams in the group matching and additional notes upon completing the donation. And you can find that at supportlafd.org. That's supportlafd.org. Every little bit counts. I'm definitely going to be making a contribution because as I talked before, this is something that can help not only the victims out there of this incredible tragedy, but also help you, like, understand like I can do something now and not regret not stepping up and doing something for these people that desperately need your help. So one thing I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge was Zane Gonzalez, the Washington kicker who boinked the field goal, and how he used that moment to talk about his OCD. Because if you guys saw it, he was literally adjusting his hair several times before he made that kick, and he was talking about how um, that wasn't because he was nervous. It was more of like a tick. Like I have a little bit of OCD, so this hits home to me, and I'm incredibly like I love when people are so open and use these moments uh, to as awareness of it because it is a thing. Like things, there's severe levels of it that like I've heard of people who have to walk in and out of a door like several times before they feel that they can do, like they can go through that door. So these things are real and it's important to talk about so that we have an understanding. I thought that was awesome, Zane. So yeah, guys, and speaking of depression, I need to be open and honest about mine and because developing this episode, I've been dealing with depression, and it's coming from different places, like you know, feeling if I'm not good enough, and that it's a grind, or getting motivated. Um, Especially yesterday was tough, and it's incredible that something like going out, and I love talking to different people, especially going deep, and for all those that have jumped on here, I'm deeply appreciative of the courage that it takes for you to open up to somebody that you don't even know, with the potential of being um broadcast to people that you don't even know is amazing. And that never ceases to do that. But my depression, or my ADHD, I can't really figure out which one it is. It'll be like it's almost normalized it. I need to do something else to stimulate that dopamine to feel good. Um, which was something that was so hard for me to do in the beginning, and I really doubted that I could. And now that I can do it, it's almost like the expectations are just crazy. They're unrealistic. Or I'm not appreciating the little things, like like being able to make the mistakes, by being able to experiment with different things, and I've got to go back to looking at it that way. But like I said, like there is no fix for depression. Like there is only like either medication or continuing to battle through it. And this is something that I've been dealing with since childhood. And that's something that, that an area that I wanted to explore and discuss, because like I feel that that is the root of the problem, and the only way that I can get better with that is understanding that the things that had happened to me in my childhood, either the way that I was raised or the people that I was around are still having an effect on me, and in the way that I'm developing. So I'm going to get into that and explore that deeper. So, exploring the root of the problem. So, a lot of these behavioral issues typically stem back from childhood and not being able to process emotions because of a lack of what Jen Greneman and Andre Solo describe as a secure attachment in their book Sensitive, which I highly recommend picking up. And I'm probably going to end up doing an episode about that one in the near future. So, a secure attachment is a sense of safety which has been shown to help a child achieve more in school, avoid violent behavior, navigate hardships with less trauma, and form healthier relationships as an adult. According to psychologist John Gottman, parents model emotional regulation using one of two styles: emotional coaching or dismissiveness. And this isn't like a blame, like these parents are bad, or these are the good ones. And no, this is just, I understand, everyone's doing the best that they can. It's just, it's hard to do something when you haven't been shown it, and I know in my experience, I'm still working on these things. And another disclaimer is, like, I do not have kids of my own. This is coming from a perspective of me as a child, looking back at myself as a child, and understanding that's what I would like. So in that book, Sensitive, they continue to talk about, generally speaking, parents who are responsive and who accept their child's emotions end up with kids who have a calmer central nervous system, more self-confidence, better performance in school, and more balanced reactions to intense emotions. Frequent discussions about feelings help kids learn to identify their own emotions as they come up, rather than feeling as if the emotions spring up from nowhere. These parents see emotions as an opportunity to learn, self-soothe, and connect. They develop an intuitive sense of when it is best to explore their child's feelings with them, or to give them space to work through their feelings alone. On the flip side, some parents might see emotions as distractions from handling the matter at hand, or a sign of weakness, and they truly believe that teaching them to ignore their feelings is actually in their best interest. However, dismissiveness plants a dangerous lesson in a child's head that they shouldn't ask for help in alleviating bad or intense emotions, and doing so will only make things worse. In reality, we need other people to help us process big feelings. We absolutely need to talk about them and to be listened to. So emotional neglect can have a long-lasting effect. In adulthood, it can bubble to the surface as self-anger, low self-confidence, or a sense of being deeply personally flawed. And I know that I resonated with this when I read it. And I thought it fit perfectly into, like, well, that's why I have difficulty with my emotions and confrontations, and because, like, I was taught, that those things weren't supposed to be talked about, and that they would make you appear weak. So it makes a lot of sense. So they go into methods that you can use to help. And one of them is noticing and identifying emotions. Being able to notice, name, and understand the intensity of emotions can not only help kids, but has helped me tremendously. Kids who can use language to describe exactly how they feel can self-regulate during a challenging time by either talking themselves through it or turning to someone who can help them in those feelings, help process those feelings. Yeah, and I'm still, learning how to do that. And, when I was first shown, like, here's a piece of paper and here's a bunch of emotions, try to, look at that and see which one you identify the emotion that you're feeling. And I couldn't see the value in that. But now that I'm getting more in tune with who I am and how I operate and how I can, literally blow up any situation if I'm not, if I'm not aware of where my emotions are at, even in adulthood, even as an adult or a man that's 43 years old, like I could still act emotionally as a child because that's where I stopped growing. This is completely important. You see it all over the place. The importance of, being able to regulate your emotions, especially in situations that are high intensity, because that can get us into trouble. So you can have that as emotional check-ins, like how are you feeling right now? What's going on? I noticed you seem maybe a little off, especially with kids. You want to be extra sensitive, and not try to sound like you're accusing them of something. The next one is controlling the intensity. A child who doesn't learn emotional regulation will always struggle to prevent intense emotions from boiling over. But learning to be aware of the intensity of an emotion through shallow breathing or a raised heart rate can help them stay in tune with their emotions. Help by noticing when there is something off. Like again, they said this is some of the stuff that they suggested, and you could ask them, you seem a little quiet. You didn't go out and play with your friends today. Do you want to talk about that? Never imply that there's something that's necessarily wrong, because feeling those emotions is not wrong. It's okay. Like I tell myself as much as possible, it's okay to be depressed. It's okay that you aren't feeling good right now. It's not like I chose to be depressed. It's just part of who I am, and I'm understanding that and learning how to manage that better. And you can also give them an emotional thermometer. And the last one is managing emotions. Developing tools to manage emotions, because we are emotional beings, and it can be pretty unpredictable if you don't understand your patterns yet. So this can show up as breathing techniques, like they have the 4-7-8 rule, which is you breathe in for 4 beats, you hold it for 7 seconds, and then you breathe out for 8 seconds, and you continue to do that for about a minute or 4 or 5 times. And typically with me, that really helps to get me into a better state. Mindfulness is a huge one in my life. I can't practice it enough. and taking a step back, or even preparing for when you know that there might be a challenge, like getting mentally prepared. Like, okay, this could really, I know that I have trouble in that situation. I'm going to come up with a plan to handle that, or I'm going to just expect that to happen. And a lot of times when I expect that to happen, like it's like going a dress rehearsal, just walk yourself through what you were going to say in that situation. It definitely helps.
I had two daughters, and they both seemed to be struggling in school in different ways, and started to have them diagnosed. And I realized that a lot of the reasons why I had trouble in school and could never finish college, and issues with jobs, executive function, all of it started to, the mirror started to turn around, and I was seeing myself.
Wow. Yeah.
Just really think about my kids, honestly.
Yeah.
Knowing that I have hope in somebody that looks up to me,
Yeah.
That keeps me going, really.
Because
awesome. My life growing up, man, my dad, he had real bad depression, anxiety. My childhood was hell, so I mean, all of that too, building up in my head and everything, causing anxiety and depression. Different.
No, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff that stems from childhood, like that how we are, like personality disorders. But that's so deep.
Yeah.
So this last part that I got was from the Parenting with Impact podcast with Elaine Taylor Claus and Diane Dempster, which was a great episode. And they talked about ADHD and depression and how the diagnosis can be challenging because the symptoms often overlap. So no matter how old you are, when you're not able to perform the way that society expects you to, that can create a lot of anxiety. That has to be managed before anything else can get worked on, because it's important to figure out what is really going on, because some ADHD stimulants can really ramp up the anxiety, making things even worse than before. Depression can show up in different ways, and we all can feel depressed or extremely sad, and that's just a normal part of life. However, that is why it is important to understand that there are different types and the intensity that you actually have. This should only be done with a professional that is licensed to handle that. So one type that I've learned about is caused by some event or experience, such as a death of a person close to you, or maybe you got fired from a job. This typically lasts a few days up to a few months, but it passes, and it's usually only like that one time. Another type is seasonal depression, especially during the winter months when it gets cold and you aren't getting enough sunlight. The last type that I'm going to talk about is called chronic depression, and this is characterized by feelings of hopelessness or sadness, even when things are going good in your life. Most of the time is filled with thoughts of, what is the point, even if it is something that you love to do? It can be ongoing or on and off. Depending on the severity, it can only be helped with medication. However, all types need therapy. Isolation will only make things worse. So, like when I clarify that the medication should be consulted, with your therapist. And, I've talked about that with my therapist, and, he didn't see that I needed that medication. But he also talked about how if I did, and that it would take some time for that medication to start to take effect. And most of the time in cases it has gotten worse. So like there needs to be, at least a 2-week checkup to see where you're at. So it is a common misconception to believe that depression only manifests as deep sadness, depending on the person. It can also show up as anger, aggression, intolerance, being reactive, or defensive. It is important that we understand that we do not have to do this alone. We do not have to do this alone. It is a dark, lonely, scary, hard, and heavy place for anyone dealing with chronic depression because it feels like there's no end to the hopelessness. If you are a parent, the best thing you can do to relate to your child is to remember how it felt for you whenever you felt really sad, and imagine that it would be what it would be like to live in that feeling. If your child is dealing with chronic depression. So what to look for? Sudden behavior changes, seeing them with different friends, eating disorders, or wanting to be more private. And it's important to not to just jump to conclusions. This is something where you're like, it's like you're exploring it and keeping an eye out on that behavior and seeing where that goes, and talking to them about that. I've seen you with different friends. What happened to your old ones? And like having a relationship with your kid to understand like that you can talk about these things. Because suicidal ideation is significantly more common than you think and needs to be taken very seriously. Don't be afraid to talk about it with your children. Even if you are afraid that you might give them the idea, trust me, they already heard of it. They just need to know that there's a safe place to talk about it. Some questions that you can ask to help them get through it are, I get how hard this is for you. I can't imagine what that must be like. What can we do to get through this together? And that one's important because it makes them understand like that you are taking this seriously and that they're not alone. And you can also ask, what does your success look like for you? So that's another thing that they were talking about that on the Parenting with Impact podcast, was that the child needs to feel like they're in control of the solution. They need to understand like that they're not being told to do anything. They're being invited in to work on this process at their own pace. So I'm going to be here with you through all the darkness. You can hold my hand if that makes you feel safe. And that's important. It goes back to the safety. And I know it may seem like, why can't they get through this? But it's just like I said, it's a hard, dark, and lonely place. And I've been there, especially in my childhood. And, I couldn't understand. Like there's days, even now, where I love what I do, but I just can't get the motivation. So and what works for me is not going to work for somebody, a child, because excuse me, because like it goes to the next one. I know this is hard for you and you may not believe it, but I know you will get through this. And I'm so proud of you right now for having the courage to talk to me about it. Like, they have no experience with the other side of it. So it's almost impossible for them to imagine there being anything else. So what's one thing you can imagine yourself doing either today or tomorrow? Going back and giving them the option. And if it becomes overwhelming, do your best not to get frustrated at yourself or them. Let them know that it's okay to put this away for now and move on to something that might be fun, like a healthy snack or their favorite show. It can be frustrating for both. I can get that, but it's like it's very important to understand that they're really doing their best. And the fact that they're talking to you about it, or getting out of bed even, or being even willing to talk to a therapist is a huge step. Because I remember growing up and there was times when just getting out of bed was so hard because I got to face the world. And then when I finally got up out of bed, like, I felt even more depressed because I slept most of the day away. I wasted the day. It's a vicious cycle. And it shows up differently for everybody. That's why it's very important to communicate. And developing healthy communication through a safe, caring relationship is the goal. Anyone who is dealing with depression is only going to withdraw further in their shell if they feel pushed or threatened. It's their safe place. And only when they will move on, they will only move on when they feel safe. That's why it's extremely important to reward their effort, even if it doesn't seem like it's a big deal to you. For them, it really is. And asking them how they're feeling. How are you feeling right now? Is very important to keep tabs on the temperature. So it's all about asking the right questions. And agreements are also an important aspect to that communication. So like once they've opened up about that and you know about that, then it's important that you ask or make agreements that look like, will you please agree to tell me about if you feel like hurting yourself or are really sad? I promise I won't get mad. I just want to know where you're at. Okay? So these are the things that, I'm still learning about, my childhood and the depth of the personality disorders and where the depression came from. But the more that I explore that and understand that, it's like there's such a huge connection there. And I hope this has helped you to understand that as well. So I thought that was an awesome show. I hope that you guys enjoyed it too. So the moment that you've been waiting for, I have a feelings list, like how do you feel list. and that has a bunch of different emotions, like emojis for emotions that you can look at, and and help you identify what emotions that you are currently experiencing, so that you have a name to it. And that has helped me tremendously in helping to regulate my emotions and manage them better. So you can find that list at advocate.xyz/feeling. That's ADDVOCATE.xyz/FEELING. And remember to please send some support to those victims and those firefighters um, out in LA. You can do that at supportlafd.org. That's supportlafd.org. And definitely mention the LA Rams to make the most impact in your contribution. And you can, if you love the show and you want to contribute, there is my Patreon. You can find that at Patreon/Ron Sowers. That's patreon.com/Ron Sowers. That's patreon.com/RONSOUERS. And there's every little bit helps for me to be able to get more information and serve you better. And as always, subscribe, and thanks for listening, and may the source be with you.